You are listening to Fantha Tracks.
Because of the following special program, Wonder Woman and the Incredible Hulk will not be presented this evening.
It's time to get all your Star Wars news in a single file. This is Making Tracks. Here are your hosts, Mark Newbold and Mark Mulcaster.
It's not true. That's impossible.
You're listening to Making Tracks, and a very special episode as myself and a number of fellow Star Wars websites, podcasts and outlets sit down with Dee Bradley Baker, the man behind the voice of most of the characters in The Bad Batch, to discuss Season 3, the end of the show, and much, much more. So sit back and listen to this special roundtable with Dee Bradley Baker.
I'm Trisha Barr from Fangirls Going Rogue podcast.
Hey, Trisha.
Glad to be talking with you. Crosshair has gone from this kind of classic Star Wars redemption story moving into an atonement arc. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to that?
Crosshair is a complex character who's interesting because he starts out as a selfish, grumpy, incredibly competent person, and then is caught with his own selfishness and also some bad calls he has in terms of what the lay of the landscape is. And so he is someone who needs to be sprung from two different cages. One is the actual prison cage that he is entrapped in, and the other is a personal psychological cage that I think he is also trapped in because he's a beaten man, he's lost, and he thinks all is lost. He is done, and this is completely done. And the counter to that is Omega. Omega has learned over these past two seasons with the Bad Batch to be not only confident in herself, but to have a sense of optimism and practical persistence that is open to the improvisation of problem solving that she is about to school old Crosshair in. So that's an interesting journey to be on. I think one that people can relate to work through your own obstacles, to find the light and to find the optimism and to be liberated because of that.
Hi, Dee. Dan's there from Coffee with Kenobi.
Hey, Dan.
Great to have you and chat with you. I want to talk about your journey into voice acting and vocal performance. What first drew you into this field, and how did it bring you into the world of Star Wars?
Well, Star Wars drew me in when I was a kid, when I originally watched it. I mean, that was just a bucket of space water thrown on my head that completely changed, galvanized my young mind. You know, I immediately had my parents create for me a Jawa costume for Halloween back in 1977. So I loved Star Wars. I fell hard for it, as did many people. And so it's been most gratifying to jump into that and to find my place in this amazing universe that I loved so much as a kid.
Hello, Dee. This is Kerwin and Keith of Father Son Galaxy.
Hey, how's it going, Kerwin and Keith?
How are you?
Great.
Hi.
Dad and lad.
Yeah. So, last year we asked you about what Crosshair thinks of the Empire. Now that we know what's happened in the last season, we have a new question. How do you think Crosshair will regain the trust of the Batch and Rex pending his return?
Well, Crosshair has got to walk through the fires that he has set. Crosshair's got to make the honest effort and do the work to not only get himself out and to get himself free, but also to make good on who he is and where he stands with his brothers and sister. So that personal journey is part of what's at play in this new season.
This is Steve Bloom, voice of Zeb Aurelios, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. Caravast. May the force be with you.
William Dever with Ion Cannon Podcast. Looking back on the 3 seasons of the series, do you have a favorite episode or moment?
That's a really tough one to choose. My 2 favorite moments would be, one would be Tech in the water cave talking to Omega about how he processes the world differently. That's resonated with a lot of people, and it really that might have to be my favorite moment too, because of it's something that totally fits in with the story, but it's something that people are hungry to hear, and to feel is at play and acknowledged and accepted in the world. And so that very moment, I think that might be my favorite. My favorite episode would probably be the Outpost episode with Crosshair and Mayday, which is this heartbreakingly just this tragic and sad story that plays out and is the turning point for Crosshair. And I really love that clone Mayday. He's such a heroic and noble old lion that goes down and is really helps assist Crosshair in crossing over to a different perspective and finally admitting to what he's done and what the consequences of that are.
Hey, Dee Bright Sons. We are Richard and Sarah from Skywalking Through Neverland.
Hello.
Hey. And Brad Rao had mentioned that you and Michelle really took to the relationship between Crosshair and Omega. We're going to talk about Crosshair a lot. And you guys really pushed it in the recording sessions. So can you just give us an example about how you two did that?
Well, Brad allowed us, and Jen, our head writer, they allowed us wiggle room in making these scenes feel real. And so there would be some improv involved, because here you have little bright star Omega, and here you have grumpy old snake Crosshair. And so the way that the reason that these scenes feel more real than you might expect is that they gave us breathing room to improvise the nuances of what's playing out. And that can be something as small as just a sigh, or it can be a different way of saying it may just say no period no, but it could be performed as a no. There's a spin to the flavor of what can actually just be a very simple scene that they allowed us to play with to make it feel more authentic and ultimately more affecting, as I think fans are going to see soon.
Hi, Dee. This is Alex from Star Wars Explained.
Hey, Alex.
Hi. Looking back at 16 years worth of the Clone Wars and the Bad Batch and voicing countless individual clones, how do you go about keeping their names and the unique voices you've given all of them straight?
Well, fortunately for me, I don't have to. I do take notes with certain clones that are prominent or that we revisit. If there's, for instance, a clone that has multiple appearances within an arc or within a season, I'll make some notes that are just a shorthand sketch of what makes the guy unique and kind of how to hang my helmet vocally with that character. And then the last resort is they can always the engineer can always quickly dial up that particular clone so we can hear what he sounds like, so that there's this a continuity of what's already been established, because that's very important, is to keep these guys not only sounding different, but to maintain a continuity of character through the multiple times that we end up seeing them, because they're different people. That's the key, is that they may look the same essentially, although they have like tats and facial hair and stuff like that. It's cool to see how they want to express their individuality, because they are individuals. That's the real key to it, is they are individuals. And that's what I think people love about them. That's what I love about them, is they're not just robots. I mean, it's very much in the prequels. It is humans versus robots. And that's really what George Lucas and Dave underscored when they launched into the Clone Wars series way back when, is that these guys are human and they are distinct individuals. And so a big part of the mission for doing all these shows, all these seasons, is to keep these guys their own person.
Hi, Dee. George and Josh for the Hollow Files. We had a question about you reading the scripts for this season. So I'm sure a lot of emotions and thoughts circulated after finishing reading that final page of the final episode. I'm wondering, what was your immediate emotional reaction? What thoughts were coming into your head as you read that last script?
Have you guys haven't seen the last script though, right? Well, I don't want to talk with too much detail because I don't want to spoil a Star Wars moment for you. But I will say that the emotions that are in play are real human emotions, not just one of being a family member or a friend, but also of being a father to a daughter. I have 2 daughters. And so just not to get into it too much, but that there's a lot of authenticity that's in play with how the season finally, in its epilogue, plays out, and it's very affecting. It's very beautiful, and I'll defy you to avoid tears.
For everything in one location, daily news, reviews, interviews, podcasts, video, and social media feeds, bookmark FanthaTracks.com for Star Wars news 24/7, 365.
Hi, Dee. This is Tara Bennett from Star Wars Insider Magazine.
Hey.
So I wanted to ask, alluding a little bit to what you'd spoken to before, you're tracking all of these very separate, distinct personalities, but coming into a final season when you know that that these are arcs that are going to have their climax and conclusion, was there a different way in which you came into this season talking with Brad and Jen just to either get a little information so that you could prepare or to be able to, in your own mind, kind of arc out these individual stories that you're responsible for and, throughout these last episodes?
Well, my great advantage coming into all of this are the beautiful scripts that Jen wrote and that the writing team wrote with Brad and Dave's oversight and assistance. And it's that is the gold that any actor wishes for, because when it comes down to it, the script is the most important thing. And then it's a matter of getting the right people to allow the script to be as good as it can be. But if you don't have a good script, there's no amount of technique or effort that will make it a not good script. So I was very lucky to launch into this new season with a very high stakes, emotionally connected setup, and so that right away was already in place. As are the relationships and the dynamic of what's playing out. It's really clarified because the Bad Batch started out as kind of like, what are we doing? We're sort of these oddball guns for hire that work within this larger military structure, but now we're just freelance, and so we're doing some freelance missions and trying to figure out, are we just going to survive? Are we actually going to do anything other than just kind of keep going, or what are we doing? And then finally, it comes around to turns out we have to engage with this. We have to get involved, and in doing so, we get bit, we get separated, we get attacked, we get things we got to deal with. And so that's what's playing out here. So I guess what I'm saying is that the whole ground landscape was so fully and beautifully prepared that it was much easier to step into this season, which it's got a lot more going down, not just personally, but also on a larger scale. They bring it into a satisfying conclusion. I was actually heartened to hear that they said we're finishing it with 3 seasons, because that was a sour note for me when we stopped the Clone Wars without finishing the Clone Wars. And I thought, as did all fans, it's like that was it. The creative pipeline is smashed, as Dave said, and it's just we can't recover the elements. We're not going to do it. It ain't going to happen. But then it did. And so that was the lovely thing, is that the Clone Wars got this wonderful, satisfying, devastating finish. and the Bad Batch get their own finish too. So I was very happy that this group and this story gets to fulfill the all of the threads and all of the stories, the questions that the series started with so beautifully with that first episode. And so I was very excited to see what they're going to do. And as we saw at the end of season 2, is they are not afraid of making things happen. And we'll see more of the fruits of that very soon.
Hey, Dee. Brian Young, Full of Sith podcast. I'm curious, you've been doing episodes where it's very clone heavy, going back to season 1, where you're practically the only person doing voices. This season of Bad Batch, we have episodes where if it's not the record for the amount of different clones you had to do, it's close. And I'm wondering what that's like doing those episodes sort of by yourself, where you've got the Bad Batch and all the regs and everybody. But how has that process changed for you, or has it over the years where you've had to do that with all these clones?
I think I've relaxed into the juggling match of of reading through a scene or an episode where it's mostly just me talking to myself, and I have to make the reality of not just the sound of the voice clear and accurate, but it also has to play out with the choreography and the presence and the energy charge of the scene that's playing out as well. Now, way back when in the Clone Wars, when we didn't even know if that was going to work, it was more of, I was a little more freaked out about it. Now, I think I've relaxed into the magic trick of jumping from character to character to character as we move through the scene, because the writing is very clear, the story is very clear of what has to happen, and Brad and Jen are there to guide me with this. And so I can do this with more confidence and more ease, with something that seems it's fuller and it's more complex. But I'm used to playing the orchestra. I'm used to the instruments. I'm used to bringing this all into one symphonic sound together, and so it's something that doesn't feel as daunting or frightening to me as it once did.
Hi, Dee. It's James from Jedi News.
Hey, James.
How is it coming to an end of the Bad Batch and saying goodbye to these amazing characters? And which member of Clone Force 99 are you going to miss the most?
Well, I mean, I find myself at the end of this with profoundly mixed emotions. I'm very happy of how it's played out. It's cinematic and beautiful and full, and it's great Star Wars. But even if you're not necessarily a Star Wars fan, it's great storytelling. It's a compelling story with characters that you connect with. And so it's been really gratifying to be a part of that. It's also something that I very much will miss, but you learn this as an actor, is you come together to make a show, to collaborate in the story that you're telling together, but then there's always a final curtain call and you say farewell, and you move on to the next show. And you get used to this as an actor, which is a very human thing, is that we come together and tell the story of our lives, whether it's learning to be a person in our society, or to be a family member, or to be a good friend, and or to be the owner of a pet or something, but something that you invest yourself in, that you collaborate with to create this story, this human story, and then eventually you have to say goodbye to that, and you move on, and you find other stories to connect with and to support yourself with, or to give yourself to. And so that's it. It's with great mixed emotion that I feel the approach of the wonderful mission that we are bringing home.
Hi, this is Julie Dolan, the voice of Princess Leia, and you're listening to Fantha Tracks. It's your only hope.
Evening, everyone. Hi, Dee. Mark from Fantha Tracks.
Hey.
You've been so involved in so many storylines in, obviously, the Clone Wars and now in the Bad Batch. Do you think the
the Clone Wars era and the post-Clone Wars era gets the credit that it really deserves? And as an actor being so involved, how interesting has that been for you to perform all of this?
Well, the Clone Wars era, I mean, all I see is just lines of fans at the conventions who want to say hello to this clone or that clone. So I think the attention is very much there, and I feel it. You know, I feel that full force with the fire hose of fandom that you experience at a convention. So it's very exciting to be a part of that, and yet I do feel only a part of it, because the thing is, people want they want to say hello to Rex. They want to say hello to Wrecker. They want to say hello to, I don't know, Cody or whoever else. And it's like, yes, I voiced these, but I did not write these. I did not direct these. I didn't animate it. I didn't light it. I didn't, on and on and on. There's a whole collaborative army of these artistic, brilliant technicians and artists who are creating every single frame of it, that is, if we still have frames of the story that's playing out. And so I temper my actor's ego with with the perspective that this is a grand collaboration of a story, and that the way that these characters and these clones connect with the fans and the people that love these shows is part of a group effort. And I am but one of the troops on that dropship.
If you want to be part of the action, visit fanthatracks.com, or be sure to comment, like and share on our social media feeds at Fanthatracks. Send in your listeners' questions by emailing radio@fanthatracks.com. Subscribe, leave a review, preferably a 5-star one, on Amazon Music, Audible, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcatcher or smart speaker of choice. And as always, thanks to James Temple for composing the Fanthatracks intro, Adam O'Brien for our Making Tracks opening music, and Mark Daniel and Vanessa Marshall for our voiceovers. Tune in to Good Morning Tatooine. It's live Sunday evenings, 9 o'clock UK, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific, on Facebook, YouTube and Twitch. And check out our Fantha Tracks Radio Friday night rotation every Friday at 7 o'clock UK time for new episodes of The Phantom from Down Under, Planet Leia, Desert Planet Discs, Start Your Engines, Collecting Tracks, Cannon Fodder, and special episodes of Making Tracks. And every Tuesday at 7 o'clock UK time for your weekly episode of Making Tracks. And remember, fanthatracks.com, our social media feeds, Fantha Tracks TV and Fantha Tracks Radio are absolutely so no Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, Kickstarter or Indiegogo required to stay updated on all the latest Star Wars news.
Until we catch up with you again, may the Force be with you.
Coming up next on Fantha Tracks Radio, it's another episode of Making Tracks.
Great questions. I appreciate it very much.